And so with that, welcome back to the series. We're going to go over a few things I've mentioned in the past. I've brought up this dude's name before. I've brought up some other things that he's involved with as well. And I said, we'll get there eventually. We're now going to get to that. And it all begins with a man by the name of Pierre Teilhard de Chardin. This is a pain in the butt type of name to say, so I'm just going to reference him as de Chardin. It's just easier. And he's one of the leading men for eugenics and transhumanism movement. This is one of the leading guys for this. And he also pulls in the responsibility of working within, not with, within Christianity to transform it into something new. We're kind of seeing some of that, aren't we? So this is the guy that you've probably never heard of and is believed to be, he is believed to be behind one of the many things we see in technology, health, the modern church, as well as the philosophy of the World Economic Forum. So let's begin with this guy himself. Isn't that just a wonderful face? That is Pierre Teilhard de Chardin. And he was born in 1881, died in 1955, and he was born in Augerville, France. And he was also an ordained Catholic priest. He was a part of the Jesuit order and is credited with many New Age and consciousness philosophies. And his main mission in life was to combine Christianity, Darwinism, and science from the inside. Now, this dude is also believed to be credited with a lot of things, including the idea of the internet, because his new system that he was trying to create involves the internet. It involves a neural network of human consciousness, which, again, if you've been paying attention to this series, that kind of sounds familiar about things like the Heart Math Institute, what Barbara Marx Hubbard talks about, as well as the New Age thing of positive energy and oneness with the planet. That's right. He's one of those guys that was a part of that. His teachings of this Darwin Christian hybrid was extremely popular among the Jesuit order. Who would have thunk that, right? But he was also quite divisive among his Catholic fellows, with some accepting his teachings and others opposing it. And because of that, he was kind of restricted, and it was ordered that a lot of his writings were not to be published until after his death, which really was the case with a lot of this stuff. Now, de Chardin he also had connections to the Rockefellers. That should be no surprise at all, as he spent 20 years in China, during which he joined a Rockefeller-funded expedition that led to an event or a discovery called the Peking Man. Now, you may have heard about this before. They believe that they found a fossil that is a mix between an ape and a man. This is where a lot of the confirmation of Darwinism and evolution comes from. But apparently, the fossils, which supposedly confirmed this theory, well, they just disappeared immediately after the discovery, and nobody has any idea where they're at. It's kind of fascinating how they just happen to come across these fossils that prove evolution, and then they just disappear forever, and they're just gone. Well, he was a part of that, and that was a Rockefeller-funded organization. Now, keep in mind, it's called the Peking Man because this was in that region of China at the time, and it's important to understand Rockefeller's history back then because they were the ones that funded the creation of the Peking Medical Institute in China, which is the highest-rated, finest medical system in China. And so they funded that, as well as this expedition that apparently confirmed evolution, where the fossils just happened to disappear, and de Chardin was a part of that as well. How convenient, right? A guy who's trying to mix Christianity and Darwinism just happens to be on a Rockefeller expedition in China to confirm that he found the fossils, and then they disappeared, but yet he didn't know where they went, and he didn't really care. It doesn't matter because it was confirmed. Well, that's what his followers believed at the time. Now, de Chardin, however, used this to persuade more people to accept that Darwinism must be folded into Christianity and to pursue the next evolution of man. So this is where he used it as a way to confirm / pursue the idea of evolution, conscious evolution, which is taking that next step, as well as try and fold it into Christianity, because he was always trying to get Christianity to accept more of this the science type of stuff. Now, when he says Christianity, I couldn't really confirm this, but I'm guessing it's going off of the world standards that includes things like Mormonism and Catholic and whatnot, because they tend to group all of that together, which, as we know, as Bible-believing, Christ-following Christians, no, not at all. Different Jesus, that not even close. Actually, as we've gone through this, we understood that all of those are a part of this mystery religion, the woman who rides the beast in. And so that only confirms it even more, that those are a part of the Gnostic foundation, the Gnostic root, and they will be folded into the one world religion when that time comes. Because if you dive into all those religions, they're all looking for their Messiah, so to say, whether it's the Maitreya or the Ascended One or the light bringer, bearer, one of those. It could be both. There's so many religions out there. They're all looking for that guy. Well, of course, they're all going to be fooled when the Antichrist steps onto the scene. They're going to think that that's their guy. Nope. That's not how that works. So far, we can see how through lying and manipulation, as well as funding through other New Age believers who are also pushing the mystery religion, de Chardin was trying to prove his new system through this false fossil find, which only caused more people to follow along with his Christ conscious evolution, transhumanism, and eugenics belief as well. Now, it's important to remember at this point, thanks to good old teachings from the late great Chuck Missler, because dude was just fantastic when it comes to these things. We have to understand the pattern of prophecy. Now, this is the important thing to understand that I think a lot of us lose track. And I've kind of talked about it before, but I want to put it in the way that Missler explains it, because I think he explains it better. The patterns of prophecy, we tend to look at prophecy as, okay, these are events that God has seen already happened to God, so he explains it to us, and these are future events to happen. Well, a lot of people, as Missler has pointed out, well, a lot of the rabbis and whatnot, they see prophecy as just pattern, which if we study what happens in the Old Testament as well as what is revealed in the New Testament, makes a lot of sense, because it's always throwbacks to those times. The end times prophecy talks about the days of Noah, Sodom and Gomorrah, days of Lot, the pursuit of becoming gods. Everything's trying to get back to the Tower of Babel, so to say. So when we look at what's going on, everything that was happening back then is happening now. Nothing new under the sun. Satan can't create anything on his own, so he's just trying to do the same old trick for this end time. So everything that we see happening today really points back to, again, the Tower of Babel. And that's where I tend to say it. We're trying to get back there. Everything's trying to get back there. One language, unholy pagan trinity, the acceptance of the Antichrist or Nimrod back then, the Antichrist in the future, trying to get back, again, bring back the one language and become gods again. Everything is trying to get back there. One world religion, because it was one religion back then. They're trying to get back to that. It's all a pattern again. And so Satan is just trying to play that same old song and dance for the end time. So I think that's also a very important thing to remember as we look at these things, is it's all trying to, everything might be new as far as updated with technology and all these things, but it's the same roots just being displayed in a different way. I think that's the best way to put it on that. So basically, this is just another example of trying to become gods again. And he even pointed to it in a letter from March 21, 1941. So if we take a look at this letter, he said, this is his own writing, "According to my own principles, I cannot fight against Christianity. I can only work inside it by trying to transform and convert it." Guys, this is the modern church that we're seeing today. A lot of what he taught is coming through the modern church. A revolutionary attitude would be much easier and much more pleasant, but it would be suicidal. So I must go step by step, tenaciously. His goal in all of this, and this just shows honestly how devious, and he's an evil man. I don't like to call a lot of people evil, but in this case, I'm going to call him evil because he is. His whole goal was to infiltrate Christianity from the inside and inject these things into it to transform, to morph it to where he wants it to go. And so that was his whole goal on this. And so his goal of joining belief systems to transform Christianity, he created a new system that is held by many, including people like Barbara Marx Hubbard, Deepak Chopra, Julian Huxley, Thomas Berry, Jean Houston, Martine Rothblatt, and Ray Kurzweil, amongst others. You should recognize pretty much all those names because we've all talked about them and how they're all connected to each other and how they all believe these same things and they're all trying to obtain the same goal. But one name you might not recognize is Julian Huxley. And if you guys don't know, that is, in fact, Aldous Huxley's brother, which we have talked about him before and how his book, well, his famous book was really more of a instruction manual rather than a warning like a lot of people think. But let's take a look at Julian Huxley's background. He's the brother of Aldous. He was the first director of UNESCO, president of British Eugenics Society, first president of British Humanist Association. He was awarded the Darwin Medal. Oh, we see a lot of familiar things here. He was a founding member of the World Wildlife Fund. Now, why is the World Wildlife Fund? Why did I put that in there? Well, the WWF, not the wrestling group, no, the World Wildlife Fund, has names such as Julian Huxley, Prince Philip, Morris Strong, and Godfrey A. Rockefeller, a part of that, as well as they have provided grants to the Charles Darwin Foundation. This group is built upon the same idea of oneness, planet oneness. We are a part of the organism, the neural network of the Earth. And so they're trying to preserve it. All the climate change stuff and everything like that, well, they're a part of that. But they also fund the Darwin funds as well. See how that kind of works together on that? Yeah. So that's Julian Huxley. Now, I introduced him on this one, but we're going to talk about him probably next Saturday because here's where we have a split with de Chardin's pursuits. We've got eugenics and we've got transhumanism. We don't have enough time to cover both of these tonight. We'd be here for a very long time. So I'm going to split them. We're going to talk about eugenics tonight, and then next Saturday we'll talk about the transhuman stuff because that's a big subject on that. So let's talk about de Chardin's eugenics pursuits and how it flows into today's landscape. I'm going to bring it all the way up to some events that happened in 2020 and how there's some connections there on this. So to understand his extreme focus on eugenics, we have to understand his hatred of nationalism, which that's important to understand. God told us to go and create nations, to have borders, which we see a lot of that being stomped on today. That's directly against God's command for us at the time. And so we see that that's a pursuit of that. He also has a hatred for nationalism as well. He also has a love of evolution, which shouldn't surprise us. We just talked a little bit about the Peking man discovery, as well as his blatant racist nature. Now, I'm not going woke. Calm down, because I know some people, as soon as you say that, oh, he's going with the woke stuff. No, this dude was racist. Like, he really had a hatred for other ethnicities and whatnot. He absolutely despised the Chinese and thought that they were much lower than Caucasian people. Seriously. So this is legit. He was and that only confirms eugenics, because whenever you talk to eugenics people or read about them, they always had a hatred for anybody that wasn't their own skin color or whatnot. So that shouldn't really shock us. So let's look at a few quotes from his writings over his time so we can learn a little bit about him, his belief system, and how we'll get an understanding of why he pursued eugenics and transhumanism and whatnot. It's important to understand where this stuff comes from. So if we take a look at one of his writings, this comes from 1933. He confirms it. He says, I hate nationalism. Literally, this is his writings. I hate nationalism and its apparent regressions to the past. but I am very interested in the primacy of primacy. It returns to the collective. Could a passion for the race represent a first draft of the spirit of the earth? There's the oneness, the neural network right there, spirit of the earth. It is to this last one that I have always given my faith. So he's just confirming, again, he hates nationalism, so he's going against what God commanded us. And he's basically saying that in not so many ways, he's basically saying we need to preserve the earth, the spirit of the earth, by eliminating those who really don't believe the same way or contribute the way that we need them to. We'll see more of that as we continue to go through. Let's take a look at another one. This is from 1937. He says, what fundamental attitude should the advancing wing of humanity take to fixed or definitely unprogressive ethnical groups? Oh, wow. See, we got some racism showing here. The earth is a closed and limited surface. See what I mean? He's not saying it directly, but he's saying it. We got to get rid of the, as Harari would say, useless eaters. To what extent should it tolerate racially or nationally areas of lesser activity? If you don't contribute how we want you to, you are wasting that limited surface. More generally still, how should we judge the efforts we lavish in all kinds of hospitals on saving what is so often no more than one of life's rejects? Isn't this just you just want to take this guy home and meet your mom, don't you? To what extent should not the development of the strong take precedent over the preservation of the weak? It's quite clear what he's saying here. Reduce the numbers on the earth. Get rid of the useless eaters. That's really what he's saying, just in his way of writing it. Let's keep going. Let's take a look. I don't think we quite got it yet. Also from 1937. For a complex of obscure reasons, our generation still regards with distrust all efforts proposed by science for controlling the machinery of heredity, of sex determination, and the development of the nervous systems. He's talking about designing humans, guys. It is as if man had the right and power to interfere with all the channels in the world except those which make him himself. And yet it is eminently on this ground that we must try everything to its conclusion. You know, if I didn't put his name there at the bottom, you might think that is Adolf Hitler, because he believed and thought and spoke the same way. That's why him and his Nazis, demonically controlled scientists, there's really no other way to put it, possessed scientists, were working so heavily on eugenics. They were working on trying to create the perfect human being. And that's basically the same belief that this guy held to, which is why he pursued eugenics so heavily and why he believed in things of like eliminating useless eaters. I got one more here. And this is kind of the cherry on top with all this. This comes from the 1930s. It was written in the 30s, but because of, some of the publications and whatnot, it didn't get published until 1955, but this is believed to be written in the 30s. So I don't have the direct year, but it is in that time frame. It says, so far we have certainly allowed our race to develop at random, and we have given too little thought to the question of what medical and moral factors must replace the crude forces of natural selection should we suppress them. In the course of the coming centuries, it is indispensable that a nobly human form of eugenics on a standard worthy of our personalities should be discovered and developed. Eugenics applied to individuals lead to eugenics applied to society. And what that means is creating in their mind the perfect human through eugenics as well as transhumanism, which we'll talk about next Saturday, in order to develop this new religious system that he wants that will reach the Christ-conscious level. Now, what is this system that he created? Much of these beliefs were factors when he created a new religious system called the Omega Point. You may have heard that before, but may not know what it is. It is a 4-stage system from the universe. So the universe is blocked off into 4 stages. First stage was cosmogenesis, which is the belief that God created the Big Bang in order to create the universe that we see today. So it's kind of, again, the mix. Remember, keep in mind, his goal was to combine Christianity and Darwinism together. So how do you do that? God created the Big Bang. You've got both elements there. That's where that comes from. The next stage, biogenesis. Life begins an evolution. So God created the Big Bang, which then produced life, and then God allowed evolution to take place. Yep. Mix of Darwinism and Christianity again. How many churches teach God created the Big Bang and that God used evolution to develop the humans? There's quite a few out there if you haven't seen yet, guys. There's a lot of churches that preach that. Then we have homogenesis, which is consciousness, or the noosphere, or the noosphere, however you want to put it, pronounce it. Some people pronounce it differently. This has to do with evolving humanity's conscious level to all get on the same page, to all have the same enlightenment and awareness, a part of this neural network on the earth, which will then launch us into stage 4, which is the Omega Point, Christogenesis, spiritual convergence, the Omega Point, becoming co-creators with God. Where have we heard that before? Yeah, that's been a running theme through this entire series. Now, the noosphere and Omega Point, we're not going to dive into that specifically tonight because that applies a little bit more on the transhuman side of things. So hang on to those, put them in your pocket. We'll talk about them next Saturday. But as of right now, according to their belief system, we are at the homogenesis. We are in the consciousness state. That's why we see so many systems out there. Again, we talked about the Heart Math Institute, where we're trying to align our hearts and our energy in order to bring awareness and enlightenment and to heal the earth. We hear all the time about the triangles from Alice Bailey's Lucis Trust. That's a part of it too, where you're supposed to, at the same time, in different locations around the earth, for them, that's 3 people, will then meditate at the same time in order to connect their heart energy around the earth. And if so many people do it, then the neural network will continue. You see the running theme through all of these things? These are all different things, different beliefs, different religions, but yet they're all trying to accomplish the same goal. Now, why is that? That's right. They're all rooted in Gnosticism, the same beliefs, so they're all trying to reach the same conclusion. Again, this really answers the question of how are all these things going to all come together? They're all trying to do the same thing now. They're all trying to accomplish the same thing now. They're all looking for the same person. This only just confirms it. But what we see going on in the elite level, like from the WEF and the UN and the World Bank and you know, all these 2, 3, 4-letter organizations out there, this is what they're seeking. Everything that you see from this guy is the same stuff being touted by people like Klaus Schwab and Harari and Nita Farahani and all these people. They're all preaching the same thing that this dude was teaching. The same exact stuff. Eugenics, removing the useless eaters, stepping in to become gods, our own gods through technology. It all comes from this dude. The guy you've probably never heard of. It's fascinating, isn't it? I think it's fascinating. And I think when we have this understanding of where all this stuff comes from, we get an understanding of what they're aiming for. And it kind of connects a little bit more dots on the prophetic side of what they're trying to accomplish. We can kind of look for their next move a little bit. Of course, we're not going to know exactly what it is, but we can kind of take a stab at, oh, okay, the next step is something along this line. And it kind of gives us a little bit more insight of what to look for, and even explaining these things to those who may have this belief system and go, look at what this is rooted in. Look at what the Bible warns about. You need to get out of this. This is why I think it's so important that we talk about this, which is so unfortunate of why nobody wants to talk about this stuff. This is a major tool to maybe draw somebody out of this new age, this mystery religion, whatever it is, and get them to the real one true Jesus Christ. If we have this knowledge and they come at us, well, it's part of this and it's part of that. And you can sit there and go, you sure about that? Let me show you the guy who came up with all this and how it's straight from Satan. Now, most likely, you're probably going to hit some brick walls. They're going to put their shields up and whatnot. But again, something I've always talked about. It's not necessarily about winning that debate there in that moment. What it is, it's planting that seed of truth that's going to cause them to doubt the falseness that they believe in. Just plant that seed of truth. Let the Holy Spirit go to work. You may not get them on this side of the rapture. You may not get them at all, unfortunately. But hopefully something will stir inside of them and they'll realize what's going on. I think that's a lot more important, honestly, when we see what's going on. Yeah, we can have updates all day long about, the newest CBDC and what's going on with the finances, what's going on with technology. And when I talk about all that stuff too. But remember, this is in line with trying to win souls over to Jesus. We can't do that, but we can be a vessel for the Lord to work through us. Plant that seed and let the Holy Spirit go to work. This knowledge is very important. This isn't the garbage knowledge that they talk about with enlightenment and, trying to find new knowledge and all that stuff. No, this is just understanding how Satan is working, the channels that he's going through. Understanding that. And when somebody whips out one of those things, you can go, I got you. Not for winning the argument. No, that should never be the goal. That's prideful. Get rid of that. No, about winning the soul over to Jesus. That's important. And I think if we learn a little bit about this stuff, which again, I know a lot of people don't necessarily want to learn about this stuff, but I think it's important. I think it's very important. So that's what we got going on with the Omega Point. And the new noosphere is a collection of conscious awareness and awaking. It's the neural network to heal the planet and to advance the humanity into that next step, which is the Omega Point. As humanity progresses towards unified awareness, the noosphere will increase. And this is the same concept of collective consciousness, oneness, enlightenment, conscious evolution, and everybody's favorite term today, the Great Awakening. All the same stuff. What is, I get a lot of people who fight back on the Great Awakening thing because it's wrapped up in the conservative. It's not conservatism. People have no idea what conservatism is anymore. Nobody has any idea what a conservative is anymore. They just think anything that's not left is conservative. Well, that's a lie. But it's associated with the right wing, the political spectrum of the Great Awakening type of thing. Well, I just did a thing on Ingersoll Lockwood and how that's all connected there. And this is the same thing. It's about getting a hive mind of people to all believe in a new age type of belief system. That's the same thing that's going on here. It's all the same stuff. This is the same concept of those things. And to unify thought, energy, hearts, and to create an awakened neural network across the planet will then enter into the age of the Omega Point, which is God. We are gods, and we will be on the same level of God and be co-creators. This is the same stuff that we've been talking about for a very, very long time on this series. Combining eugenics and technology will allow the noosphere to reach critical mass and break into that fourth phase. That's what they believe. Now, this would be the cosmic Christ, as they say, which is the same thing as Christ consciousness. And that's basically man will be on the same level of God. This is the same concept found in the very root of Gnosticism, which of course is the world's first religion, beginning in the garden, spreading through Babel, and is the foundation for all religions, which will then end up in the same point when the Antichrist, at the midway point of Daniel's 70th week, will sit in the temple and declare himself to be God. Patterns. So, we got a little history on this guy, what he believes. He's pushing the same stuff as all the other guys and whatnot. We got a little bit on the eugenics. How does this translate to today's arena? How do we see this on display today? Well, I've kind of pointed at some of the people like Schwab and Uncle Klaus and Harari and Farahani and some of these people, Barbara Marx Hubbard, Gene Houston. These are names that we talked about before that have a lot of influence in a lot of these things. But specifically, what are some of the ways that we're seeing it maybe in some smaller players, but have bigger roles? Small name, somebody you may have never heard of, but played a big role on some of this stuff. How does that pertain? So let's look at this. For that, we must say hello to a guy by the name of Theodosius Dobzhansky. Yep. And I'll tell you what, he has a face only a mother could love. I'll tell you that much. Meet Theodosius Dobzhansky. We're just going to call him Dobbs because I'm not going to even continue to try and pronounce that name. But yeah, lovely face. Again, yikes. I'll spare you from having to look at that any further. So Dobbs here was born in 1900, died in 1975, and he came to the United States from the Russian Empire in 1927 on a scholarship from none other than the Rockefeller Foundation. Oh, man, it's amazing how they continue to pop up with eugenics, right? Keep in mind, if you guys don't remember, the Rockefeller Foundation, along with Carnegie Endowment, created Cold Springs Harbor Eugenics Program, which is the same one that inspired Hitler to do back in Nazi Germany. Just saying. Now, he got the scholarship, moved to the United States in 1927. He eventually worked at the Rockefeller University, and he was also the president of the Genetics Society of America. He was on the board of directors of the American Eugenics Society. So we got a lot going on with eugenics here. That's also the same group that Margaret Sanger was a part of. That's right. And he was also president of the American Teilhard de Chardin Association. This dude was all about de Chardin, his belief systems, eugenics, and all of this. This was his area. But it's his position of founding director of the Hastings Center that we're going to follow. This is not a good group. This is not a good organization by any means. And this dude was the founding director of it. Dobbs placed his love for de Chardin's teachings and his eugenics work, which followed him into Hastings. He took that belief system, he took his works, he took all the ideas of eugenics and control of population and all these things, and he brought it into the Hastings Centers, which he was the founding director for. And the same beliefs and work was also with a colleague of Dobbs by the name of Daniel Callahan. His face is a little bit easier to look at than Dobbs. But yeah, this is Daniel Callahan. Callahan was also funded by the Rockefellers and was the co-founder of the Hastings Center. So we've got the founding director and we've got the co-founder of Hastings, who are all, both of them were devotees they devoted their lives to studying de Chardin's beliefs in eugenics and the Omega Point and all of these types of things. Callahan's involved with a bunch of other things too, along with like the Ford Foundation and some other things as well. But either way, both of these guys funded, trained, brought over by the Rockefellers, created this eugenics program, which was designed off of de Chardin's and the Rockefellers eugenics program. Not good. Not good at all. Now, coming in as a fellow of the Hastings Center, now this is where we start to see this string tie to some of the events that we saw in 2020. Coming in as a fellow of the Hastings Center with backgrounds in both bioethics as well as eugenics is a man by the name of Ezekiel Emanuel. Oh, doesn't he just look so happy? Yeah, that's the face that wants to kill you. Seriously, that's the face that wants you dead because you are a useless eater. Ezekiel Emanuel. Maybe you've heard the name, maybe you haven't. It's important to keep in mind that Ezekiel is the brother of both Ram Emanuel and Ari Emanuel. Ram, of course, we know him. He was part of the Obama administration, part of the advisors there, as well as I think he was a ambassador for Japan, I believe. He's the one who quoted Saul Alinsky's "Never Let a Crisis Go to Waste" type of thing. That's probably what you know him through. Ari, maybe you haven't heard of him so much. He's a media and talent giant. This dude is an Uber agent. Like, this dude is huge in the entertainment business. He's also the CEO of Endeavor Entertainment and Media Corporation, which owns UFC and WWE. And where this kind of all ties in, because you're like, okay, what does that have to do with anything? Ari, basically, he threw fundraiser. He was a host for fundraisers for the Democratic Party. He donated to Hillary Clinton, but he was also the agent for none other than Donald Trump, and was also being considered for a secret job in the Trump administration, which they say he never got, but who knows, right? So we've got all three brothers here heavily involved with politics, medical, and entertainment. Man, that's ugly. That's ugly. Let's get back to Ezekiel, though, because this is the important part. Ezekiel is a member of the Rockefeller created, which we talked about how that started, Council on Foreign Relations, with a long list of being involved in high-profile health decision tanks. Let's take a look at this dude's background. So Ezekiel Emanuel, brother of Ram and Ari, he was a fellow at the Hastings Center, member of the Council on Foreign Relations, senior fellow at the Center for American Progress, special advisor to the Director General of the World Health Organization. Whoa. The WHO special advisor. Founding chair of the Department of Bioethics at the National Institute of Health. He helped draft the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare. He was a chair of the WEF's Council on the Future of Healthcare Committee. Oh, my goodness. And he was a member of the Biden-Harris COVID Advisory Board. Wow. This is the same dude who was a part of the Hastings group that's all about eugenics of de Chardin and Rockefeller. And he was all a part of that. Wow. Again, you just follow the strings and you see how it just snakes into everything, don't you? He was also a public advocate for mandatory injections for healthcare workers and students. And he was also in support. Now, this is important. He is also in support of death panels. If you don't know what a death panel is, it's a board that would determine medical supplies and who they would go to. And what that means is only the elites will receive the medical supplies. And those that are elderly and in poverty, off with you. You're just a useless eater. You don't contribute to society. Didn't we just read that from one of his quotes? Which one is it? Is that it? Yeah. This is exactly the same thing. To what extent should it tolerate racially or nationally areas of lesser activity? How should we judge the efforts we lavish in all kind of hospitals on saving what is so often no more than one of life's rejects? To what extent should not the development of the strong take precedence over the preservation of the weak? It's the same thing. Same exact thing. And that's what he was pushing for. That's what he was advocating for, which really shouldn't surprise us because he wrote this. Yikes. Yeah, he wrote this. Why I Hope to Die at 75. An argument that society and families and you will be better off if nature takes its course swiftly and promptly. We're starting to see that become a little bit more mainstream in the world, aren't we? Like Canada, some of the European countries, they're all implementing this type of thing. A lot of euthanasia, a lot of just letting the elderly go. And if I remember correctly, that was one of the main targets for the 2020 stuff as well. That was a purge of elderly, if you guys didn't know that. One of the many reasons for it, not the only reason, but that was part of it. Purge of the elderly and the weak and the poverty, which is the same stuff de Chardin was pushing, which folded into the Hastings group, which is spread all throughout the WEF and the WHO and all those groups. I understand a lot of people might not realize the connection of mystery religion when it comes to things like that, because they're like, oh, there's so many new age things that, it's about prolonging life and celebrating life and whatnot. But this is the deep root of what it really is. And when you see the push of climate change and the push of limited resources, and you look at things like the Georgia Guidestones and keeping numbers under control, and there's other things out there that I can't necessarily say on this platform. This is what it's rooted in. This is exactly what it's rooted in. Now just wait until you see the celebration when millions disappear. They're going to love it. That's a conversation for a different episode, though, because that definitely plays a part. This is the same mindset and premise that is found in the eugenics beliefs of the Rockefellers, Carnegies, de Chardin, Barbara Marx Hubbard, Hitler, and the WEF today. The creation of a smaller, younger society that will participate in the noosphere to bring in the omega point. This is also the same eugenics belief, again, Hubbard, Huxley, and others. And when it comes to de Chardin's transhumanism structure, we're going to take a look at that next Saturday. This is a main component of what we're seeing today. The same, and I understand this might be hard for people to try and connect dots. Just go through the series so far and you'll start to see it. The same stuff that people think is political and all about elites trying to stick thumbs on people is really led by her. It's part of this one world religion creation. Remember, she's the one that rides this beast in. Now she'll get taken out eventually, and then the one world religion comes in, and then Satan's going to basically say, worship me at that point. But she's bringing all this stuff about. And while some religions might go, oh no, that's horrific. No, that's not what we believe at all. I don't know, because when we look at the Christian church, there's a lot of people, a lot of the Reformed who believe that the Knights Templar was actually a good Christian group out there trying to preserve Christianity. But when we look at that, which we did a little bit, we realize it's the exact opposite. They worshiped Satan, but yet to a lot of people in the Christian sphere, they don't know any better. It's the same reason why you look at a lot of the Freemasons and how the Shriners and the Freemasons are connected to so many churches. I had a friend, I haven't talked to him in years, but I had a friend who he joined the Shriners Club through his church with many of the churchgoers who were part of it. And when I tried to explain to him the history of it, he said, nope, you're lying. That's false. He doesn't know any better. But when you look at the history and what they believe, they worship Satan. Just like the Knights Templar, they worship the Baphomet and Sophia. Just because And I'm speaking to those who are involved in some of these religions, if you're watching. Just because you may not think that all this stuff is connected and really what's going on in your belief system doesn't mean that it's not actually going on in your belief system, especially when you realize that they all come from the same place. This is, as many people, or if people don't realize, this is mystery religion. It's not political. It's not, elites just trying to put their thumb and rule the world type of thing. Even some of them, obviously, but a lot of them believe in this type of stuff. Harari, Farahani, Schwab. Again, if you want to learn a little bit more about Freemasonry and Schwab and all that stuff, go check out Billy Crone's series. He's done those. He breaks it down. It's all there. There is a spiritual warfare. And I know it's kind of similar to deception. I talk about how, everybody talks about deception, but they really don't understand the depth of what's going on, that myself included. I try and dig as far down as I can, but that goes farther than any of us realize. Well, I think spiritual warfare is the same thing. I think spiritual warfare is we have an idea of what it is, but yet we really have no clue what it is. Sometimes we forget that even in the rooms that we're sitting in, even the room that you're sitting in now, or I'm talking to you guys, the very room that you're sitting in now, there is a battle between angels and demons going on. And it's happening all across the world right now. And the demons are being able to gain more as we step into these last days, and eventually after the rapture, the day of the Lord. Satan's setting up his generals, his army. And so that's why we continue to see darkness continue to grow in today's world. But at the same time, we have to recognize that darkness that's growing, a lot of it is this mystery religion riding the beast in, preparing the way for that one world religion. And this stuff is included.